A father's reckoning. The Sapphire Star cruised through the Gulf of Mexico, its decks gleaming under the August sun. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, the kind of scene you'd expect from a luxury liner packed with America's elite. I stood by the poolside bar, watching my son, Ethan, 12 years old, his wheelchair tucked beside a shaded lounge chair. 10 months ago, a hit-and-run in our quiet Tampa suburb stole his ability to walk. A gray sedan, a red light ignored, and my boy's legs were crushed. The police called it a dead-end blurry cameras, no leads. But today, Ethan smiled, a rare spark in his eyes as he reached for a scoop of chocolate ice cream. His hand shook, but his grin was steady. For the first time in months, I felt hope. Then she appeared. Margaret Hensley, president of our neighborhood's homeowners association, strutted across the deck in a cream sundress, her wine glass tilted like a royal scepter. Her perfume, sharp and overbearing, hit me before her voice did. "Who let that park by the dessert table?" she snapped, glaring at Ethan like he was a stain on her perfect cruise. My stomach twisted. I'd dealt with Margaret before her complaints about my unmowed lawn, her fines for Ethan's ramp clashing with the neighborhood aesthetic. But this was different. This was personal. She didn't wait for an answer. Margaret stepped closer, her heels clicking on the teak deck. "This is a premium experience," she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Not a daycare for those kids." Ethan froze, his ice cream spoon halfway to his mouth. I stepped between them. "He's my son, Margaret. He's not bothering anyone." Her eyes narrowed, cold and unyielding. "He's ruining the vibe," she hissed. Then, without warning, she snatched Ethan's ice cream and dumped it over his head. Chocolate dripped down his face, pooling on his lap. He gasped, stunned, his shoulders hunching in shame. I lunged for her wrist, but she twisted away, laughing. Then she raised her foot and stomped her stiletto heel onto Ethan's right foot, the only part of his body he could still feel. His cry pierced the deck, silencing the chatter. Margaret smirked. "Should have stayed in your room," she said. Before I could react, she shoved Ethan's wheelchair with both hands. It tipped backward, plunging into the pool with a sickening splash. Ethan sank, his arms flailing, the chair dragging him down. Margaret sipped her wine, watching the ripples like she'd swatted a mosquito. Rage consumed me. I dove into the pool, the water colder than it should have been. Ethan's eyes were wide, his mouth open in a silent scream. I grabbed the chair, kicked hard, and pulled him to the surface. Gasping, I hauled him onto the deck, wrapping him in towels. He shivered, whispering, "I'm okay, Dad." But he wasn't. Neither was I. Margaret stood there, unbothered, sipping her wine. "Accidents happen," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. He was in the way. My vision blurred red. I grabbed a champagne bottle from the bar, stormed toward her, and smashed it across her face. The crack of her teeth breaking echoed. She staggered, blood pouring from her mouth, shrieking. I didn't stop. I grabbed her dress, dragged her across the deck, and slammed her against the railing. "You hurt my son," I roared. "You pushed him to drown." The crowd watched, frozen, phones trembling in their hands. Security shouted, but I didn't hear them. I raised the shattered bottle again. Margaret whimpered, "You're insane." I leaned close. "No, I'm a father." I dragged her to the champagne tub, a glittering centerpiece of the cruise's gala. Her body thrashed as I plunged her face into the icy water. 10 seconds. 15. When I pulled her up, she gasped, mascara streaming like tar. "This isn't revenge," I whispered. "It's what you are." I shoved her back under, then let go. She slumped over the tub, coughing up champagne and blood, her designer dress soaked, her ego shattered. I poured another bottle over her head. "To every kid you've humiliated," I said, then walked back to Ethan. "You're safe now," I told him. He nodded, trembling but alive. I thought it was over. I was wrong. By morning, ship security pounded on my cabin door. Margaret had spun a story. I'd attacked her unprovoked, a violent father targeting a woman with anxiety issues. Her lawyer flashed photos of her bruises, her swollen lip. No mention of Ethan, no footage of her pushing him into the pool. The news painted me as a monster, a grainy image of me with the champagne bottle plastered online. Margaret was a board member of the cruise line's parent company, a charity darling with connections that could erase truth. The ship's cameras? Corrupted files, they said. Convenient. But she underestimated me. I wasn't just a father, I was a man done with silence. Below deck, I found the security room and a nervous tech, barely 22. You've got backups, I said, sliding a flash drive across his desk. Hidden caches. Every system does. He hesitated, then plugged it in. 10 minutes later, I had it. Crystal clear footage of Margaret dumping ice cream on Ethan, stomping his foot, shoving him into the pool, and sipping her wine as he sank. I uploaded it that night, titled, "What Happened to My Son on the Sapphire Star?" No caption, just truth. The video exploded 50,000 views in an hour, 1.5 million by dawn. Hashtags like Justice for Ethan and Margaret Exposed trended. Comments poured in. She's a monster. Arrest her. Margaret went silent, her lawyers scrambling. Then a message hit my inbox. Anonymous, no profile. I know what she did at Bayshore and 22nd. My heart stopped. That was the intersection where Ethan was hit. The attached video, grainy but clear, showed a gray sedan speeding through a red light, striking us. The license plate, MGT, HN5. Margaret Hensley's custom plate. The sender called. I was her assistant, she said, voice shaking. She buried that footage, said it wasn't worth her insurance. I clenched the phone. Why now? She paused. I saw your son's face. I know what it's like to be crushed by her. She sent me everything. Suppression letters, a recording of Margaret mocking Ethan's injury, calling him a burden. I compiled it all, sent it to the DA who'd botched the hit-and-run case, and re-uploaded the footage side by side. Margaret pushing Ethan into the pool, Margaret's car crushing him a year earlier. Caption, she broke him twice. The world decides what's next. At the Tampa courthouse, Margaret arrived in sunglasses, a scarf hiding her bandages. Her lawyers tried to spin her as a victim, but I handed the judge a USB drive. The courtroom screens lit up with the truth. Margaret's cruelty in high definition. Her assistant's testimony followed letters, recordings, proof that Margaret silenced the hit and run. Margaret snapped. This is a circus. He should have stayed home. The judge slammed her gavel. You're done, Miss Hensley. They cuffed her, charging her with child endangerment, obstruction, reckless driving, and aggravated assault. She glared at me as they dragged her out. This isn't revenge, I said. It's justice. 2 weeks later, a check arrived, $7.9 million in restitution and penalties. I didn't keep it. In spring, we broke ground in Tampa for the Ethan Hayes Center for Pediatric Mobility. Not a monument to pain, but a sanctuary for kids like Ethan. Wheelchairs welcome, dignity standard. Volunteers poured in. Even some cruise passengers who'd stayed silent then. They painted murals, donated books, and built ramps. Ethan rolled down the therapy ramp on opening day, high-fiving a girl with leg braces. He wasn't a victim here. He was a reason. That night, I stood in the center's atrium, a plaque glowing in the moonlight. Built from pain made honest, for every child pushed down, here's your place to rise. The grand opening brought families, kids in walkers, on crutches, laughing without fear. I took the mic. This shouldn't exist, I said. But it does because the world still breaks kids like Ethan. We built this not to forget, but to remember what it's like to be small and to build something big anyway. Later, on the rooftop garden, Ethan looked at me. What if it never happened, Dad? I smiled. Then we wouldn't have this. What tried to break us built this instead. He squeezed my hand. We did good, right? I nodded. Yeah, kid. We did. Margaret's name faded from the headlines, but Ethan's lives on every door of the center. Justice isn't always a gavel. Sometimes it's a father refusing to let cruelty win. Sometimes it's a community saying, not this time. If this story moved you, comment below. Do you think violence was justified to protect Ethan? Where do you stand on fighting injustice? Share your voice. Every opinion matters. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories that remind us. Even in the darkest moments, we can build something good.